In July of 1324, the economy of Egypt collapsed. It wasn't a war, a plague, or a famine. The price of gold, which had been stable for generations, suddenly plummeted. Merchants went bankrupt, prices exploded, and currency lost its meaning. And it all happened because of one man. A man who wasn't invading, a man who wasn't conquering, a man who was technically on vacation. His name was Mansa Musa, emperor of the Mali Empire. History books usually reduce him to a simple headline, the richest person who ever lived. They'll quote a number $400 billion. They'll show you a medieval map with a crowned African king holding a big chunk of gold. And then they move on. But that misses the entire point. Being rich is one thing. Having so much money that you accidentally destroy entire economies just by spending it, that isn't wealth. That is power. And Mansa Musa didn't get that power by accident. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire, one of the largest and most sophisticated states on earth in the 14th century. Mali was built on the foundations of the earlier Ghana Empire, which had dominated West African trade for centuries. Around 1235, a warrior prince named Sandiata Keita united the Mandinka people and founded Mali, not through chaos, but through organization. By the time Mansa Musa took the throne in 1312, Mali stretched across modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Mauritania, and parts of Niger and Nigeria. This wasn't just empty land. This was strategic control. Mali sat directly on the Bambouk and Bure gold fields, the richest gold deposits in the known world. Historians estimate that nearly half of all the gold circulating in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East came from these very mines. If you were a banker in Florence, a merchant in Venice, or a king in London, the gold in your pocket likely began its journey right here. But gold alone doesn't build an empire. You can't eat gold. The real genius of Mali wasn't just mining. It was logistics. In southern West Africa, gold was abundant, but salt was incredibly rare. And salt wasn't a luxury. It preserved food, and it kept people alive. Meanwhile, in the Sahara and North Africa, salt was plentiful, but gold was scarce. Mali sat right in the middle, controlling the exchange. Mansa Musa didn't just own the mines, he controlled the roads. The trans-Saharan trade routes passed directly through Mali. Every ounce of gold, every block of salt, every book, every bolt of cloth was taxed once when it entered the empire and taxed again when it left. This is how Mali became unimaginably wealthy, not through brute force, but through systems. And systems require administration. Mansa Musa divided his empire into provinces and appointed governors known as furbas. He established courts, legal codes, and a professional civil service. He maintained standing armies to protect the vital trade routes. This wasn't a loose collection of territories. It was a functioning federal government in the 1300s. While Europe was tearing itself apart in the 100 Years' War and burying millions during the Black Death, Mali was running something no European state could, the world's central trade economy. So when Mansa Musa decided to make the pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he didn't just travel, he mobilized. It wasn't a caravan, it was a moving city. 60,000 people, soldiers, officials, doctors, teachers, merchants, and entertainers. Griots, the oral historians carrying centuries of memory in their minds. 80 camels, each carrying 300 pounds of pure gold dust. 12,000 servants, each holding a 4-pound gold staff. That's nearly 18 tons of gold crossing the desert. When this procession entered Cairo, the city stopped. Chroniclers described crowds lining the streets as a literal river of gold flowed through the markets. Mansa Musa gave freely to the poor, to mosques, to scholars, to workers. He paid 10 times the market value for goods. He tipped with gold nuggets. And in doing so, he made a fatal economic mistake. He flooded the market. Gold lost its scarcity. Prices for everything skyrocketed. merchants collapsed. The Egyptian economy didn't recover for 12 years. The historian Al-Umari later wrote, "Gold lost its value in Egypt because of the generosity of this man." This is the only documented moment in history where a single individual caused regional inflation simply by spending money. And then, this is the detail that changes everything. Mansa Musa realized what he had done. On his return journey, he borrowed gold back from Egyptian lenders at high interest. Not because he needed it, but because he needed to remove gold from circulation. He crashed an economy and he stabilized it. That is not the behavior of a simple king. That is a central banker. But if you think this story is just about money, you're missing the point. Mansa Musa knew that gold runs out, but knowledge compounds. On his return from Mecca, he didn't just bring back souvenirs. He brought back people. Architects from Andalusia, poets from Cairo, astronomers, mathematicians, and jurists from across the Islamic world. And he sent them all to Timbuktu. Under Mansa Musa, Timbuktu became something the world wasn't prepared for. A city of libraries. The University of Sankara alone hosted as many as 25,000 students at its peak. While Oxford and Paris were still finding their footing, Timbuktu had faculties in astronomy, law, mathematics, and theology. Its libraries housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, some estimates say over 700,000. These weren't primitive scrolls. They were bound books with detailed diagrams, scholarly commentary, and even peer review. Scholars in Timbuktu performed eye surgery, mapped the stars, and debated philosophy. There's an old West African proverb: salt comes from the north, gold comes from the south, but wisdom is found only in Timbuktu. For a time, it was the intellectual capital of the world. And here's one last twist. Mansa Musa only became emperor because his predecessor disappeared. His name was Abu Bakr II. According to accounts Mansa Musa himself gave to Egyptian scholars, Abu Bakr was obsessed with the Atlantic Ocean. In 1311, nearly 2 centuries before Columbus, he launched an expedition. Not 3 ships, but 2,000 ships, loaded with food, water, gold, and supplies for years. Only one ship returned. Its captain described a river in the ocean, the powerful Atlantic currents that swallowed the vessel's whole. The king refused to turn back. He sailed west into that current and vanished. Did they reach the Americas? Did they perish at sea? We don't know for sure, but the ocean currents from West Africa lead directly to South America. Some mysteries just refuse to disappear. That mystery really deserves its own story. In fact, do you think Abu Bakr II's fleet actually reached the Americas before Columbus? The currents suggest it's possible. Let me know your theory down in the comments. So ask yourself, if Africa had the richest man in history, the greatest libraries on Earth, and fleets of thousands of ships, why were we taught it was undiscovered? Because when you want to colonize a people, the first thing you steal is their history. You erase the universities. You burn the books. You silence the griots. Mansa Musa proves the Dark Continent was a myth. Africa wasn't waiting to be saved. It was already thriving. But ask yourself this: if one man could control $400 billion, run the medieval world's economy, and build the greatest center of learning on Earth, and you barely heard about him in school, what else are they hiding? Next time, we're finding the city that math forgot. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Welcome to Untold African History.